What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kara Corey, registered dietitian. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell if you would like to stay tuned for future videos on this channel. For today's topic, I am going to discuss intermittent fasting. This is a topic that I have discussed a long time ago. For those of you that are OG subscribers, you may remember that I have used intermittent fasting in my bikini preps for competing, and I found that to be a very helpful tool. I wanted to do this video to kind of update things, start the discussion again about intermittent fasting because it is still very widely used and there's still a lot of research going on about this topic, and I'm still learning more about this topic as well. Before we dive into things, I do want to say this video is not saying everyone should go out and use this as a tool. I'm more so doing this video just to, again, share some information about what intermittent fasting is, the potential benefits, disadvantages, and how I've used it in the past and may possibly be using it in the future. So I'll discuss that in a bit more. While I'm using the term intermittent fasting, you may have heard it referred to as time-restricted eating or time-restricted feeding. So those two terms are somewhat used interchangeably. And then there's also something called alternate day fasting as well. So those are two separate things. Alternate day fasting is essentially what I just said. You spend one full day in a totally fasted state, and then you eat the next day and you continue to alternate that way. Versus time-restricted eating is where you give yourself a window of 4 to 8 hours essentially, where you consume all your calories, all your macronutrients for the day within that time-restricted window, and then the rest of the day you are in that fasted state. So those are the two differences there. And for this video, I'm focusing more on time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting. I'm using those interchangeably, but I wanted to throw that out there because I know a lot of people, when you watch YouTube or go online, you see a lot of different terms. So I just wanted to clarify what I'm discussing is the 4 to 8 hour window that you're actually consuming all your calories or macronutrients. That is the practice that I previously used when I was in competition prep. I found it very helpful for my bikini prep because I was in a cut. I was going into a pretty severe caloric deficit. So for me, I preferred it because it made my life easier, not only in the sense that it was easier logistically because I didn't have to spend as much time eating 4 to 6 meals like you hear a lot of competitors do, eating their smaller meals more frequently throughout the day. That takes up a lot of time versus just eating larger meals in a smaller window of time. I also just found it helpful being in a caloric restriction. Eating in that smaller window allowed me to actually feel the feeling of fullness, which most of us, when we're dieting or on a cut, if you're prepping for a competition, you don't have the luxury of actually feeling full and fed. And doing time-restricted eating allows you to feel that way. If you're eating in a shorter window, your volume of food is going to be bigger. So you may be thinking, how do I know if this approach is right for me? Just to clarify, this isn't necessarily a diet. This is just a dietary approach. This is a tool that you can keep in your toolkit, is something to assist you in your goals. It may or may not be something that's helpful to you, and a lot of what that's going to come down to is going to be based on your lifestyle. So when I work with clients as a registered dietitian, I don't immediately say, hey, you need to be doing intermittent fasting. It really more so depends on the person, their lifestyle, especially in terms of your schedule, what your day-to-day life looks like, how frequently you work out, and what your goals essentially are. This may or may not fit with your lifestyle, so it's something that you need to kind of think about if it's something that might work for you. In terms of actually implementing it, if you do feel like it would be a good fit, you feel like it's something you want to try out, to take the plunge and start doing this approach, it really isn't that difficult because everyone watching this video right now does go through a fasted state. So anytime you go to sleep at night, you're as long as you're not someone that gets up in the middle of the night and sleepwalks and eats in the middle of the night, you're essentially putting your body through that fasted state. Whether you sleep 8 to 10 hours, we're always fasting. It's very easy because we're asleep. But the best way to transition into intermittent fasting would be to essentially use that time frame when you wake up in the morning to increase that duration of your fasted state. So to use myself as an example, because it's easiest, I'm someone that works a 9 to 5 job. So I go to bed typically around 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I do get up and I train first thing in the morning before I go to work. So my day starts around 5 a.m. For myself to implement intermittent fasting, in the past, I used an 8-hour window and I would eat between the hours of 8 to 4 because I was working out essentially at 4:30, 5 a.m. I'd work out fasted, and then I would have my first big meal at 8 a.m. and I would consume all my calories between 8 to 4. So I basically ate all my meals at work, which may or may not be most practical for people. For myself, working in a nutrition department, it was rather easy to eat my meals while I was at work. And then I would come home at the end of the day and I was done eating for the day. And that's really just what fit my lifestyle best at the time. If you're someone who is a nurse working the night shift at a hospital, doing that same time window may not be the best approach. But there's really no right or wrong in terms of the time that you choose to fast. It really just depends on your schedule and what makes the most sense for you. For myself, last week, I wanted to toy around with intermittent fasting a little bit more because my work schedule was different. And so I chose to consume all my meals starting at 12 at noon, and I pretty much had all my food consumed by 8 p.m. So I was fasting from pretty much like 8 p.m. the night before up until noon the next day. And that actually worked out really well for me. So again, my point is just that there's no right or wrong. You don't have to be at any set time. It's just really choosing that 4 to 8 hour window that works best with your lifestyle to consume all your meals. Using the terms fasting and fed, I just want to take a moment to go back to that. What does it mean to truly be fasted? This is a very common question that gets asked, and I do feel like there is some discrepancies out there regarding what that entails. So what breaks your fast? A lot of what you'll find out there for what people say, or how people actually apply this, I should say, is anything with calories essentially breaks your fast. So it's very common to see people who implement this and still consume their BCAAs first thing in the morning, take their supplements, drink their tea or drink their black coffee, and don't count that as breaking the fast because there are essentially no calories, depending on what you're drinking. However, there is some information out there. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, although I haven't looked into the research studies that she cited, I would like to. If you want more info, let me know. But my husband got me into Joe Rogan's podcast, and anytime she's on, she really does kind of get your mind thinking. And she discussed a lot about time-restricted eating.
Like eating within like a certain time period that corresponds to like the day. Mm-hmm. It has really profound effects on muscle mass without any other factors, without having to exercise or anything. That's something that's extremely interesting. It's very important for health and metabolism. It's also something I've been obsessed with since like probably early summer. I've been doing it like just, really fanatically making sure that I'm eating within like a no more than 12-hour period. I try to do like 10 hours. Even a cup of black coffee, the first thing you put into your system that's not water starts all these metabolic enzymes, starts them in your liver, your gut, starts these enzymes. And those enzymes are on a clock because humans are diurnal creatures. We're meant to be awake and working and active and thinking during the day, and we sleep at night, which is different from nocturnal creatures. Like, because we are active during the day, we're diurnal. All of our metabolism enzymes and all these things are active during the day. Things that activate them are light exposure, and also food intake.
And she brought up the fact that even black coffee really actually does break your fast, because even though there's no calories in it, and actually there are minimal calories in coffee, it's not totally calorie free. But when you consume it, you begin the digestion process in your mouth. You begin the process of stimulating those enzymes in your gut when you do drink coffee. So is that truly allowing your body to fast? And she says no. So I would like to look into a little bit more research about that. I haven't applied it in that manner before. When I personally applied time restricted eating, I did make sure that when I was working out, because I'd work out fasted, that I did drink my BCAAs while I was training, and I would drink coffee as well. And actually I did put stuff in my coffee like Splenda and cream, so I wasn't to the T by the book with this approach by any means when I previously implemented. But for the most part, it's supposed to be anything that's calorie free. So you could have your BCAAs in the morning, you could have black coffee, you could have herbal tea, you could have your supplements, depending on how strict with this approach you want to go. When you think about it, our normal lives right now, at least for myself, we are mostly in the fed state. Like, we are just used to being very fortunate that we don't fast very long. We don't allow our bodies to be in that fasted state. And it sounds scary, and I feel like people, you know, when you hear about fasting, it's like, ooh, fasting, that can't be good, that can't be healthy. But when you really think about the science behind it, and you think about how we've evolved over time in our ancestors, when you go back to that time period and they didn't know when their next meal was, you know, people went days and days being fasted, not knowing when their next meal was. So it's interesting to think about it in that regard, because we're not used to it now. For me to think about taking one whole day to not eat, it's like, oh my God. Not eat for one whole day? What will I do? How could I not eat for one whole day? And while I'm a dietitian and promote nourishing your body, some of the research out there does show health benefits from having these fasted periods. And so really think about how frequently your body is in that fasted state. Is it just when you're sleeping at night? And you know, for some people, we only sleep 4 hours a night. So how long are you truly allowing your body to be in that fasted state for? Now, there's certain hormonal differences that take place when you're in a fasted versus a fed state, which is some of the thought process or the science behind how this could be beneficial towards our long-term health and the longevity of our health, and just a more quality aging process, if you will. So when we're in that fed state, our insulin levels are going to be high, which allows our bodies to store any excess calories essentially as fat. When you're in that fasted state, the opposite occurs, where your insulin levels are lower, allowing your glucagon, your growth hormone to be more elevated, which then helps assist with mobilizing your fat stores and therefore utilizing fat for energy. And for most of us that want to lose weight or control our weight a little bit more, that's what we need to do, is mobilize those fat stores and utilize them for energy. So we kind of think about that shift in terms of the health benefits that can happen. The research that's out there right now, and I'm not going to go into a bunch of specific articles. Jeff Nippard has an excellent YouTube video on intermittent fasting explaining the science, and he does a great job at referencing a bunch of recent literature. So check out his video. It's like a 6-minute video, and it's very easy to understand even from a scientific perspective. But really, there has been a lot of research done with rats, and that's typically the case. There are studies being done in humans, but it's still the exact mechanism, I think, is unclear for those studies that have been done. During intermittent fasting, if folks lose weight during that study, are those health benefits related to intermittent fasting directly, or are they related to the fact that these folks lost weight? So there's still some more research to be done, but you really do get a good sense when you start looking at the literature that there are health benefits to fasting. So some of the other benefits being an overall decrease in inflammation, which I think is becoming a bit more, not trendy, but I think consumers are becoming more aware of the role of inflammation and how that impacts our body, our mental health, and our progress in terms of our bodies if we're trying to lose weight and constantly being in this inflamed state, and what high inflammation levels can create in terms of further metabolic issues and adaptations. So decreasing inflammation is huge with intermittent fasting or with just any kind of fasting. There are different styles of fasting. Some of the other potential benefits there with some of the research that's been done has also shown, like I mentioned, longer lifespan, possibly decrease in weight or changes in your body composition. However, we'll talk a little bit more too that with intermittent fasting, it's not a direct you intermittent fast and you're going to lose weight. There's still certain things that need to be done within that window. It can't just be a free-for-all in order to reap the benefits of weight loss utilizing fasting. Some other benefits are just, as I mentioned, having lower insulin levels and just being better at like your body will become better at controlling glucose when it comes into the body. Another benefit too with some of the studies that have been shown are actually assisting in decreasing cholesterol levels. So if you're someone that struggles with hypercholesterolemia or other metabolic issues, there could be some benefits there in terms of that. So those are a few of the benefits. There's a lot of benefits to it when you read it online. However, I don't feel like everything is really backed up by research at this point in time. But one of the big things too is just an increase in your cognitive function or your brain function. And I know for me, I have tried the alternate day fasting briefly, very briefly, as well as intermittent fasting. And I do feel this interesting clarity, this interesting like focus and energy that you get, which is wild to me if you think about not feeding your body. But if you've ever tried it, it's really cool kind of the way you do get this very clear mind, this clear focus. I don't really know how else to describe it, but so there is some possibility there for improved cognitive function, believe it or not. In terms of disadvantages or a lot of the concerns that people might have with intermittent fasting, I think the biggest thing, and even myself, when I thought about doing this for my competition prep, I was like, I don't want to lose my gains. I'm a small female. I'm a natural female. I've worked really hard for the muscle I have gained. I don't want to lose that by doing these fasted periods. However, when you look at the research, especially with the research with mice, it actually showed a lot of the mice had increased lean body mass in some of the studies I looked at. In other studies, it didn't show any significant loss with this style of fasting. Now, if you're taking your fasting longer than 72 hours per se, you could see some loss there. But in terms of the short periods of fasting, I haven't seen in the literature any loss of muscle mass. So that's really good to hear because I think that's the number one concern for people, especially in the bodybuilding world and lifters. We worry about losing our muscle mass. Some potential downsides to it though, like I mentioned, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for everyone based on your lifestyle, number one, but number two, depending on your medical history. And this isn't an approach that should be used by everyone. If you're someone who is very sensitive to drops in your blood sugar, if you already struggle with hypoglycemia, or maybe you have a history of diabetes, this may not be the best approach for you. For people with adrenal fatigue or thyroid issues, again, the fasted period could potentially cause some stress on your body, so that could potentially further worsen your symptoms. I'd always recommend, if you have a significant medical history, if you're someone that is not just a healthy person right now, run it by your doctor is always advised to make sure that they think it's a smart approach, especially if you're someone on set medications. There's a lot of medications people take for a number of reasons that are better absorbed with food. So things of that nature. There's a lot of times where using this approach is probably not the best approach for you in terms of your health and what your goals are. I do want to point out too, for those that have maybe struggled with eating disorders or maybe OCD tendencies or obsessions with food, again, this may not be the best approach for you. More so I say that because you do have to be very on top of, this is when I eat, this is when I don't eat. And if for some reason you don't follow that and you eat a little bit outside of your window, it could further create this obsession or this guilt with food and following, what's right and what's wrong. So really for anyone with those types of history, again, I throw it out there because I don't want people to think when I do these videos I'm saying everyone and their brother should do it. This is just kind of a style that could be utilized. Something that's important to remember as well, I kind of touched on this before, but what do you eat when you're in your fed period in order to get optimal results? Well, it really still comes back to the fact that you need to eat healthy. You need to still fuel your body, eating the right foods. It doesn't mean that during your fed state, say from 12 to 8 p.m., that you hit up every fast food place and, cram it all in. It doesn't work like that if you're someone that's trying to lose weight and actually gain these benefits. The same normal ideals about health still apply here, you guys. So still getting in your proper proportions of macronutrients, micronutrients, eating the proper amount of macros for your body that you need to either maintain where you're at, bulk if you're trying to bulk, cut, either way, it's going to be individualized based on you. And those same rules apply that you're going to want to be feeding, you're going to want to feed yourself during that window with healthy foods. Otherwise, if you're not, I don't know that you're really going to see a huge benefit. My personal experience with this, with bikini prep, I found it very beneficial because, like I mentioned, I was on a cut, but it allowed me to eat that higher volume in a smaller period of time, which really did help me in terms of just feeling more satisfied and made it easier for me to adhere to my diet. For many of us, one of the big issues we have is late night eating. That's probably one of the number one things that I hear from a lot of the clients I work with or people that reach out to me is I can't control that late night eating. The binges, or once I just start eating at night, I can't stop, and those feelings. So this is where I think intermittent fasting may be very helpful for people because it kind of gives you that stopping point, that shut off time. And I know for me during prep that was helpful to come home and, once it was that time, it was just black and white for me. I was done eating and I didn't have to worry about, going in for extra food or opening the fridge and looking around. It was just, I was done, and it made it simple. And there's definitely an adjustment period with this type of an approach. So if you're someone that's used to waking up hungry and eating your first meal right away, this might not be a simple transition, but you will transition. Your body is super adaptive, and so try it out for at least a week or two to see if it's right for you. If you are interested in trying it out, I would say give yourself that 2-week period to see if your body does adapt, because you'll be amazed at how quickly you may adapt to it. And for myself, one of the other benefits I saw there was just an overall reduction in cravings. And that's something I noticed when I, informally implemented it last week for myself at work. The week prior, I was struggling a lot with chocolate cravings and giving in to them in excess. And so I wanted to try something different this past week. And with implementing intermittent fasting, I had no cravings. So whether the two are directly related, it's hard to always tease that out, but I do feel like it made a difference. Waiting till noon, and then what I would do is eat my first meal would be my biggest meal, where I'd have a good source of protein, carbs, and fats. And I don't know, it just, for me, it did help me feel a little bit more focused throughout my work days, and it did help me with cravings. I didn't have any issues with cravings last week. That might just show the hormonal differences that occur when you're in that fasted versus a fed state. And it worked well for me. And like I said, logistically, it's kind of nice to not have to be spending as much time eating if you're someone that eats frequently throughout the day. It's nice sometimes to kind of shave that window down a little bit and not waste so much time eating. The other common question I wanted to touch upon too was how it impacts your workouts, because Again, depending on your lifestyle, you may work out fasted or you may not. I am someone that, regardless of implementing this approach, I typically work out fasted, and that is just where I feel best. And everyone's different with this, but I have trialed and errored this enough times that I just have badass workouts when I am fasted. I feel better. Again, my focus is there. I don't feel heavy and sluggish. I've had times where I eat and then work out, and even if I allow enough time for digestion, you know, even if it's 2 hours post meal, I just don't have that same like zip in me to get a really great workout in. So this may come down to personal preference. For me, my body has adapted to training fasted. So that's something for me that I don't feel is negatively impacted when I implement this approach. After I toyed with it a little bit last week, I think I am going to continue to implement this as this week goes on, just because I want to see if I continue to have that overall benefit of decreased cravings and better adherence to my diet right now. So for me, I'm gonna keep playing around with it because I've never done it when I haven't been in like a extreme show prep. Like right now I'm just living a healthy lifestyle. I am trying to still like lose a little bit of weight. So I'm gonna start implementing this approach more consistently to see what kind of benefits I personally get from it. I'll give you guys updates on that if you want to stay tuned for upcoming videos. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Hopefully I covered kind of the basics on everything for you guys. If you have further questions or want me to dive into more details in upcoming videos, please let me know. I do plan to do a little bit more research on my end, so I'd be glad to share what I find with you guys. So if you did find this video helpful, please hit that thumbs up button. It lets me know that you guys enjoyed the video. Share it with others that you think may be helpful. And again, subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video.